So, Unit 4, Activity 9, avoiding burnout and overtraining. This is something that I'm pretty passionate about in terms of sharing this information with many of you guys, actually, because what we're experiencing, in my opinion, right now is we're destroying high school age athletes, and that'll be a question you'll get to answer and give your opinion on a little bit later in the course. I've had the pleasure of going to I've been lucky and had the pleasure to attend a few workshop presentations by this gentleman, Steve Lidstone. So he works at a Brock University. He's the manager of the High Performance Center. He's done a lot of work with young athletes, with athletes at the university level as well. But he does presentations in terms of looking at managing young athletes and their time. And he says between the explosion of club sports, which is outside of the school, and you've got school sports, which are still going strong. You've got a high demand on these high school age athletes, and they're being asked to participate in a lot of sports all at the same time. So the one piece that he shared is that one, you should have a Google Calendar that anybody that works with you should be putting the information. That's what they're making you do every day, and that starts with, it could be your high school phys ed teacher, any of your high school coaches, to all your club coaches, to any personal trainers, all those types of things. They should be entering all the stuff they're doing with you in the calendar. And then that way people can see what kind of volumes you're doing and what things you're focusing on, so that your programs and schedules can be adjusted. Because right now that's what's not happening, is that high school coach assumes that they're coaching one athlete and that they're the one that coaches them, and they're not taking into consideration the other stuff that they're doing. And the other piece of information that he gives is that 3 hours a day. So that's how much time you guys should be spending with a physical activity, is 3 hours a day. And that includes travel time. So if you're having to drive an hour and a half somewhere, you've already pretty much taken up your 3 hours a day just with travel. And that's one of the things that's killing a lot of our athletes these days as well, is that everybody's traveling these long distances to try to get to these specialized coaches and specialized programs. And it may be something that needs a rethink to try to figure out how can we provide for athletes that are a lot closer to home, so that we're not stretching them thin. So again, it's an opinion piece, and you can make your decision once you've been through the unit. But that's what we're going to take a look at, is this kind of stuff. So again, how much are you doing? So here's a video to reflect about overuse injuries in young athletes. It's more information about overtraining and burnout in young athletes. And so what is it? Why is it being caused? What are the different things that can happen from it? Which is a parent's perspective, but is my child at risk of overtraining and burnout? And so those things all come in. And then, of course, you see early sports specialization again. The other piece is to not confuse multi-sport, meaning you're doing 3 sports all at the same time. Multi-sport means that you're supposed to do 1 sport in each season. And unfortunately, right now, we have a lot of students that are doing more of a multi thing, which can take a toll. And sometimes you don't need to do it. For example, I had a young lad went to OFSA cross country this fall. He was 18th in the midget boys race. He did 1 practice all season for cross country. That was it, right? The reality is he's playing competitive hockey. He played in the school soccer team. There was no way I was going to ask this young lad to do the 16 or 17 practices that were required during that 8-week season for cross country, on top of what he was already doing. And so sometimes we got to think about those types of questions. So again, how do you avoid overtraining or burnout in a young athlete? Trying to be smart with them. How much exercise is too much? So here's a bit of stuff here about how much you should spend, and some seasonal rest, all those different types of things. Take a look at a lot of this information, and just sort of think about what you're currently doing, because that's the piece right here. So based on what you've just read and based on what you're experiencing, what you're going to do is you're going to post to this discussion, and your statements are based about this. So smooth sailing. So smooth sailing means that, things are going great. The volume of work that you're doing is great. You're able to manage everything. It's awesome. Daily maintenance means you're needing some adjustments, right? But things are going pretty good, but you are needing to go and see a bit of physio, or you're going for support in this or that, just to sort of keep yourself going. On the edge, on the edge means that you're pretty close to burning out, right? And so even with the daily maintenance, or the daily maintenance supports you might be receiving, your body's quite close to perhaps being as far as it can go. Maybe you've crashed and burned already. Maybe you've been doing 3 or 4 sports, and it's been 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week, and you're in a situation where you've had an injury, right? You're out right now because of overtraining, those different types of things. And so you could be crashed and burned. Or maybe you're an uncut gem. So maybe you've got all this ability and you haven't really trained yet. And so basically, you can start doing some training programs and those types of things, and nothing to come from it except for more increases in performance. So again, just share a statement that best describes you with your classmates in one paragraph and explain why you feel the statement's appropriate. Assignment number 2, it's rest time. So we looked at fit earlier in terms of exercise, but there's also fit in terms of rest time. And we often don't think enough about rest, because when you actually grow, improve, fix your body, it happens during the rest component. So if you aren't resting enough, then you're simply bringing your body down by continuing to work out. So if your body can't recover, if their body doesn't get time to put itself back into shape, then eventually you're just getting weaker and weaker, and at some time you're going to crack. So this just goes through frequency, intensity, time, and type, as it has to do with training and recovery. And then we get into sort of active and passive recovery. So there's different types of recovery. There's taking a complete day off and doing nothing. But there's also active recovery. So that means active recovery means you're still doing something that's related to physical activity, but lower intensity, and it's designed to help you recover. So you can read through what active and passive recovery are in this section here, just to get an idea of what it's all about. And then in the discussion here, you can talk about whether or not you're more likely to recover actively or passively. And if you answered passively, now that you know the difference, will you cool down and try active recovery from now on? If you answered actively, then explain what it is you're already doing to recover. In the consolidation piece, this is the destruction of high school athletes section. And again, this talks about, so Steve Lidstone, the gentleman I told you about earlier, and this is just sort of the misconception that more is better. Charlie Francis, who coached Ben Johnson back, he wrote the book Speed Trap. And so he was a sprinter back in the 70s. And when he went over to Europe, yes, they were taking steroids and performance-enhancing substances. He goes, but they also did not train with the same volume that the North Americans were training on. So that idea that more was better, it wasn't actually true. He said they were training less and they were getting better results because the training that they were doing was quality. You'd think as a track and field cross-country coach, I'd be into high volume. I hate high volume. I hardly ever have my kids just run distance for the sake of running distance. So our workouts, there's fewer workouts per week and they're quality workouts, right? So we'll work on speed a couple days a week. And the reality is that's at a young age, but it's all that's needed to sort of get it through. So again, different philosophies. People will argue with me, but I'm a firm believer that less is definitely more. And I've seen it, work with different groups of athletes. I had a provincial championship cross-country team in 2004 out in British Columbia. And that boys team, they only probably averaged per runner 2.5 practices a week. That's all they were attending. And yet we were able to get them running quick enough that they could have that success. So again, my perspective is that less is better, and you're not going to overtrain. And the reality is later on, if you decide you want to get into that even more, then you've got room to build on, as opposed to already having hit your max at this young age. There's also some speed training mistakes, things that keep athletes slow. There's some testimonial stuff here. This is a hockey one, so it's an overtraining hockey testimonial. So again, a bunch of different things that you can take a look at. Again, this is my opinion. I'm sharing that with you, but in the end, you can make your decisions based on your experiences and the information that you've read. And you can sort of then make a decision from there. And so this is the case. So now that you've read this information, in your opinion, is the current system destroying many high school athletes? If you think yes, it is, support your opinion with examples of your experiences or the experience of others. And if you think no, then again, please support your opinion with examples to illustrate why you don't think that the current system is destroying many high school athletes. So again, using one detailed paragraph, opening sentence, 3 supporting ideas, and a closing, right? You need at least that. And then add that into this discussion.